It's that thing in Smashville that everybody hates but just won't seem to go away. We're talking, of course, about the Juuse Saros trade rumors. There's more of them today, so we asked, who are a few teams that might make good landing spots for Saros, and what can the Preds get in return? We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, start with a special shout out to the loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you and we appreciate your support. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
Also want to mention today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Well, Ann, neither of us like it, but I feel like we need to talk Juuse Saros trade rumors again.
I will take things I am not interested in even considering for 800, Alex. But here we are.
I mean, it's been the chatter.
Keep talking.
It's been the chatter since the season ended. There was more talk in The Athletic this week about some potential trades, around the NHL. Saros was kind of the number one name mentioned. Elliot Friedman was on 102.5 The Game this morning. Mentioned the Preds haven't called anybody, but multiple teams have called the Preds. So there's a lot of chatter, but it's coming from, teams outside. So, that confirms what we thought. Preds aren't shopping him. And I have to ask you just off the bat, this is the trade chatter that has been around since the trade deadline.
Right.
Like even after the trade deadline, you hear like a lot of people from other teams be like, oh, that's who we should be swinging at this offseason. Like that's who we should make a trade with. It's been, kind of the number one, I guess, trade talk story around the NHL since the season ended, especially since the Preds season ended. At this point, do you look at this as there's just too much smoke to this, something's going to get done, or do you think it's still in this is just chatter at this point, we'll wait and see?
I think it could be either one. My fear is that where there's smoke, there's fire. Because listen, friends, up front, I hate everything about this topic. And we could go on that rant for days. But it does make me wonder, where there's smoke, is there fire? Here's what I will say. We've talked about there is talk of a Juuse Saros trade. There was talk that the LA Kings called the Predators at the trade deadline to talk about Juuse Saros. And I think you have to be careful about what that means. And you and I have talked about this before when we've talked about these trade rumors with Saros is, talk could mean that David Poyle's phone rang and he picked it up, and on the other end were the LA Kings saying, surprise, we would like to talk about Juuse Saros. Right. Or does talk mean what it means to these like hip, cool younger kids now, where like a couple is talking, apparently when you're talking now, according to my plugged in teenager, that means that you're exclusive, and it has a more serious meaning. So What kind of talking is happening? Because I can live with the fact that David Poyle's phone is ringing, that Barry Trotz is picking up the extension, and they're listening. I'm okay with that kind of talk, because you should know what your players are worth. You should know the market value on Juuse Saros. I feel very uncomfortable if this topic is about teenage talking, where there is something serious that may be happening and we're just waiting to find out how serious. There's the point at which I don't like this.
Yeah. It's one thing if somebody flirts with you at a bar. It's another thing if you flirt back. That's like what the Nashville Predators are. Are they flirting back right now? Are they like, well,
flirting?
Yeah, like maybe we'll give you Juuse Saros if you play your cards right.
Oh dear God.
Who knows? Maybe there's a top prospect you want to send our way,
Yeah. I feel very uncomfortable with that on a number of levels.
Sorry if I put a Barry Trotz flirting image into your head.
Yeah, that was a
good analogy. So let's talk about some teams that might be interested in Juuse Saros. There's a couple that we know are linked to the Preds in this trade. There's a couple of others that maybe you and I think would be good fits, maybe should be calling. So let's start in with the one that we know is linked to this. This is the main team that has been linked to the Juuse Saros rumors really since the beginning, and that's the Los Angeles Kings, a team who, you look at their analytics, were really, really good, among the best teams in the NHL. The goaltending just didn't get them to that elite level that they needed to be at. So what do you think about Juuse Saros' potential fit in LA? And if you're Barry Trotz, when you're looking at that, scope of a roster they have any there, what are you wanting back?
I'm not a good if you were Barry Trotz person, because like you and I said before we recorded, if I'm getting someone back in a deal for Juuse freaking Saros, I want them to come with like 3 kidneys. Like I want my money's worth with Saros, and I don't know that Barry Trotz and I are on the same page.
I thought you were going to be like, oh, because I don't flirt back.
I also don't flirt back. But the LA Kings are a really interesting team, and you look at what they already have in place with they've got Kempe, they've got Kopitar, Nashville Predators fans say a fond hello to Kevin Fiala and Victor Arvidsson. They just got Gavrikov in a trade. So they've got so many great pieces to be right there. This is a team that's right there. And a Juuse Saros piece takes the LA Kings and makes them serious contender if you had somebody like Juuse Saros in net. So I get why the LA Kings are very, very interested in this. My problem is I don't know that they have enough for me to make it something I would consider doing.
Yeah.
Part of that is what they have. Part of that is what the Nashville Predators need, and the situation the Preds would be left in Juuse Saros-less.
Yeah. So if you're the Nashville Predators, you're definitely looking at that roster and going, yeah, okay, send us Quentin Byfield, man. Or you want our franchise goaltender, send us Quentin Byfield, send us Alex Turcotte. I don't know if the Kings are going to like really get into that. Maybe 1 for 1. I mean, if that's the case, I still don't know if the Kings do it, especially with Byfield. But there's some depth there that maybe you can piece, maybe not the big guns, but a couple pieces together. One person that was mentioned a lot is Arthur Kaliev. Our buddy Eric Dene was a big fan of this guy when he came out in the draft. 2nd round pick, kind of starting to find his own. He's got 1 more year left on his entry-level contract. You also look, the Predators, we talked about it yesterday, and maybe need some younger defensemen to build around. They have somebody by the name of Brandt Clark, who was their top pick just a couple of years ago.
Yep, 8th overall.
8th overall. That's somebody that maybe the Nashville Predators go like, okay, we won't ask for your main guy. Like, we won't ask for, Quentin Byfield. But how about Brandt Clark? How attached are you to him?
Right.
Maybe that's the thing. And I bet, the Predators probably could pull somebody like that from the LA Kings, especially if, they add in, they don't have the 1st rounder this year, but they add, maybe another high round pick next year or their 2nd round pick. You can pull a good package, from the LA Kings. And I think there's so much pressure from the Kings side to go and land a goaltender like Saros.
Yes.
That, you look at the roster they have and you go, okay, how desperate are we? Because that's the bottom line is the Preds, they have, like, keep in mind, they have all of the leverage in this Juuse Saros situation.
Very
They're not
true.
shopping him. Teams
Mm-mm.
are calling him. If there's multiple teams, there's going to have to be a team that comes up with a winning bid. So if you're the LA Kings, you got to be willing to look at somebody like, maybe Alex Turcotte,
Yes.
maybe Brandt Clark, throwing a couple sweeteners in there and be like, okay, this is what it's going to take. Here's what we'll give you.
My question when it comes to the LA Kings and doing a deal is, do they need a Saros level goaltender? Is that more than what they need for the LA Kings? Juuse Saros is, and then the Nashville Predators fans have seen this. Juuse Saros is a franchise kind of changing player in the sense that he automatically takes the team from one level up a notch. Now, the Nashville Predators aren't, their next notch is not Stanley Cup Finals, so we're not necessarily seeing that right now with Saros, but he will automatically take your team up to the next level. And I wonder if the LA Kings really need that. Would they be willing to give up like Brandt Clark, Alex Turcotte, some picks when they could probably be very successful with a good goaltender? They don't necessarily need a Saros, do they?
I mean,
everybody wants one.
Yeah, you had Jonas Korpisalo last year.
Yeah.
And he was the better goaltender in that Edmonton series, and they still lost that series. Maybe if you have Juuse Saros, you win that series.
I feel like there might be some deals for LA between the Korpisalo and the Saros level where it wouldn't cost them as much. Mm-hmm. But maybe not. I don't know.
And also keep in mind the LA Kings have some salary cap issues right now.
Yeah.
They're trying to get somebody off the books. We've already heard they're trying to trade Victor Arvidsson. There's other players like, Alex Iafallo making $4 million a year. There's some of those guys that, yes, you include a top prospect in that deal, but maybe the Preds say, hey, give us your top prospect and we'll take some salary off your hands.
Yeah. Give us a right now guy.
There's a couple of people on that Kings roster that are veterans like Iafallo or maybe Victor Arvidsson even, that might be an intriguing fit in that Andrew Burnett system.
You may stumble on something. Look, Victor Arvidsson left under John Hines because he didn't fit in that John Hines system. Victor Arvidsson, now he's a little bit older in hockey year, like in hockey sense. He's not an old person, but in hockey years, he's a little bit older. But Victor Arvidsson, zippy, a little bit of who wouldn't pay extra money to see a little Victor Arvidsson jump screen in front of a goaltender again? You're pulling at the heartstrings with that one a little bit. But yeah, I can see the Predators saying, give us one of your almosts, but we'll also take a right now off your hands too.
Yeah. So that's the obvious one. The LA Kings are the obvious one. There's a couple of other ones. Some have sort of been linked to wanting a goaltender. Some that we just think might be good fits. We're going to talk about those teams in just a second. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football's over, basketball's over, hockey's over, but hey, baseball is still in full swing.
Oh, I see it.
Get it because it's baseball. And there's no better place to get in on all of the ball game action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. There's plenty of great bets available, from who's going to hit the first home run of the game to just straight up who's going to win the game. So don't miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Again, all you have to do, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball and official partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Ann, let's talk about other potential landing spots for UC Saros. We know the Kings are the big one. Who's another team you're keeping an eye on that maybe would kick the tires on a UC Saros trade?
The one that I've seen online, kind of the trade that's popped up online, and I think it's more about the individual players than it is about this team's need, perhaps, is the Ottawa Senators.
Mhm.
Because have you and I not seen this blasphemous notion of Alex DeBrincat 1-for-1 for UC Saros?
How do you feel about that, by
I
the way?
feel
Because the Locked On Senators guys have pitched this to us. A lot of
yeah.
their fans have been like, "Yeah, Saros for DeBrincat. That's fair." What do you think about that?
I think it's preposterous.
Yeah.
I think it's preposterous. I really do. In not anything against Alex DeBrincat, you and I have talked. This is a player, a younger player who I think could bring some really interesting things to this new offense that Andrew Brunette is looking to create here in Nashville. I'm not saying that he wouldn't necessarily have value here. I have a question about, is this the right time to bring somebody like Alex DeBrincat here? And I certainly question if the cost of UC Saros 1-for-1 is the right move for the Predators. I just think that a 1-for-1 is preposterous. I don't know. Am I overreacting?
I mean, my thing is, I just don't know if Alex DeBrincat is that guy. Like, yeah, he's got 2 40-goal seasons and he's a young forward. That would be great. But I think he has here's my thing about Alex DeBrincat, because I don't want to make any like glaring generalizations about him or anything like that. But he has sort of gone, like his numbers have gone down enough when he's not with elite line mates, whether that be Patrick Kane, whether that be Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stützle. His numbers drop enough when he's not with those guys that it's fair to question, okay, is this really an elite scorer in the NHL? Or is this a 60-point guy who becomes a 40-goal, 80-point guy when he's with really good line mates? And that's not, nothing bad about guys that continually score 50, 60 points every year. Like, that's great.
Amazing.
That's just not what the Nashville Predators have right now. They have their lineup is packed with so many guys that do great when everybody they're playing with is also playing great. But when they're not playing great, who's the person on the Nashville Predators that steps up and it's like, nope, I am the one that is going to generate this offense for everyone else? That's the kind of guy the Nashville Predators need, whether he's that guy right now or whether he develops into that guy later. It doesn't matter as long as they have somebody that they envision that type of player on the roster. And to be perfectly fair, I think it's fair to question whether DeBrincat is that guy.
Yeah. And I agree with you. That person that I am stepping up and making everybody I'm playing with better guy is a more rare find than I think we realize. And I also think that's one of the only things that I think UC Saros, a 1-for-1 trade would even be worth doing. I have one other one that's ridiculous, and we'll get to that one later. But I agree with you. I think you want that guy, and I don't know. I'm with you. Could be Alex DeBrincat is that guy, but we don't know. And to give up UC Saros, we know. Nashville Predators know exactly what you get with UC Saros. You know what you get. And do you give that up for an I don't know? The other thing I wonder when it comes to Alex DeBrincat is, do we have somebody that could grow into what he could be, into what Alex DeBrincat could be for the Predators? Could Joachim Kimmel 2 seasons from now be the finisher, be the PowerPoint points dude that Alex DeBrincat, could be right away? And to trade Saros on an if like that feels really, really risky to me. I hesitate to do that. And the 1-for-1 makes me think, oh, y'all just have not really hung out with UC Saros.
No, I mean, no disrespect to anybody pitching that. No. I just don't think they really see the value.
Yeah.
In UC Saros right now. That's the other thing about Ottawa is I go down this lineup. I know people that I would want. I just don't think it's the same, list of people that Ottawa would be willing to give up.
Right.
They're not trading Brady Tkachuk. They're not trading Tim Stützle. I would even doubt that they would trade Jake Sanderson. And then beyond that, they don't have like a super deep prospect pool. They've traded a lot of people to try to win now. They don't have any of their top 3 picks this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't, unless Barry Trotz is somehow convinced that like DeBrincat is that guy, I think there's better options out there for the Nashville Predators, unless, you get desperate at the last minute.
And I don't know that Juuse Saros 1-for-1. And look, again, Juuse Saros is a franchise player that's going to take you up a notch. But I don't know that the Ottawa Senators feel like they are where they need just that one little thing from their goaltender. They have Anton Forsberg, Cam Talbot, he had a thing. He had a little bit of a rougher season, but I don't know that they feel like, man, if it's just that next level goaltender that's going to do it for us. Like, I'm not sure that's where the Senators are either.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, they're also desperate to try to win right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another team that's kind of desperate to win right now and accelerate things, and that's the New Jersey Devils.
I know.
They finally broke through. The rebuild broke through. They have franchise players all up and down their lineup, like Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, guys on defense like Luke Hughes that just came up. So, they have, Nemec, the number 2 overall pick in the draft a year ago. They have a lot of players, a deep prospect pool, half of which haven't even made the NHL yet.
Yeah.
This is a team that, like, if you're a Preds fan, you're looking at this and salivating. You're like, oh, come on, baby. Like, there is somebody in that deep prospect pool you are willing to get way of to get your franchise goalie.
Yeah, this is a menu where you're going to read the description of every item on the menu because they're all going to sound really good and you're going to want to pick exactly what you want. I agree with you. I think the Devils have a lot to offer the Nashville Predators. I wonder if they would be willing to part with what the Predators would ask for Juuse Saros. I wonder if the Predators' ask is going to be more than what the Devils want to do. Like, here's me. Give me a Luke Hughes. Like, I'll take a young defenseman.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to give it up, but I'm sure the Preds are going to ask for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is such an intriguing deal opportunity. I just don't know if it's a deal that can actually logistically get done because I think each team has enough to kind of hold them back. There's enough potential in what they would trade away that they might not be willing to just call it and do the trade.
Yeah, that's the situation. I think, almost similar to where the Nashville Predators are. I mean, they're way further ahead and have some way more players than we do. But they're at the stage, it's like, okay, do we feel confident that we're on the right track?
Yes.
And then in 2-3 years, when some of these other prospects come out, we're just going to have a massive super team that's going to tear up the NHL?
Yeah.
Or are we deep enough that we can move some guys and still feel like we are on the up and up, like still feel that we're not mortgaging our future? I'm looking at their lineup and I think they can do that. Like they're not like, I think they're not going to trade like, Simon Nemec or Luke Hughes or anything like that. But, you look at their depth up front, do they trade Alexander Holtz? Their first, 7th overall pick from 2020. Dawson Mercer, who was a rookie last year, are they set down the middle that they can look at, somebody like Dawson Mercer and be like, okay, if this gets us our goaltender that's going to get Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier a Stanley Cup, then yeah, maybe we're willing to part with one of those two guys. And the other interesting option is, you move some salary around, the Devils have Videk Vanacek locked up.
Yeah.
Maybe they send somebody like Akira Schmid back the other way to Nashville.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, here's like, you got one more year of Lankinen. Here's, a very good stopgap. And also somebody that, hey, for some reason Askarov doesn't work out or needs, some extra help. Here's another goalie that you can develop.
Yeah. And I think you do have to look at Nashville's goalie situation when you're talking about trading Saros. Everybody is banking on Yaroslav Askarov. And here's what's real. I adore this. I adore this goaltender. He stresses me out terribly when I watch him play, but I would cook him any holiday meal gladly with my bare hands. I adore him. But I don't know if he is as NHL ready as a lot of the Nashville Predators fan base think he is. And that's what worries me when you talk about trading Saros.
I think it's going to take at least a stopgap year to get to Askarov. And there's people that mention like, hey, if you trade Juuse Saros, you don't necessarily have to go and, fast track Askarov to the NHL. There's guys out there like, Freddie Anderson or Jonas Korpisalo that you sign maybe for 1 year, maybe 2 years, and see how it goes. Lankinen's on the books for another year. Maybe you just kind of have a 1A, 1B veteran situation, give Askarov that extra year and just kind of see how it goes from there. So, the Preds have options here. Let's quickly get to some teams, Anne, and just kind of a yes or no if you see maybe potential there. Let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay,
a team that's been searching for goaltender for what seems like 20 years now. We know, I think the Maple Leafs would love to have Saros. Do you see a trade fit?
You know what? I would be interested in talking to them about one of their core four guys for Saros. And that's how much I think of Saros, because I think probably the Maple Leafs would think that was ridiculous. But how about a little William Nylander?
Yeah, I mean, there's, you hear like new GM Brad Treliving, which that whole thing is hilarious, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
But you hear, Treliving talk about how he, wants to keep that core four together. So maybe it doesn't happen. But, they're, kind of a mess right now. Like they have, 7 UFAs up front, and then 3 UFA defensemen who all played significant roles last year. And they only have about $14 million in cap space. So they're going to have to make
so affordable.
So they're going to have to make some major moves sooner rather than later if they want to kind of speed up this process a little bit. Here's another one, Anne, and this is interesting because up until, let's say, March, this was a team that a lot of people thought might take a big swing at a goaltender. And that's the Buffalo Sabres.
Yes.
Another team loaded with prospects. However, one of those prospects is Devon Levy, who is considered maybe the best goalie prospect in all of hockey right now. Made his debut last year for the team. If you're Buffalo, do you still go like, Juuse Saros is a guy that puts us over the top? Or are you rolling with your own young goalie, at least for a year, to see how things go?
It's really interesting because I think what we saw from Buffalo last season surprised everybody. I think it even surprised Buffalo a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if they're wrestling with, are we closer than we think to being a team in contention again? If they are, maybe they roll with what they've got. Maybe they say, hey, we're gonna give Levy the time in net and just kind of grow with him. And in the next 2-3 seasons, we'll see where we're at. But they were really hot. I thought Buffalo was a really hot team. And so there's a part of me that's like, I could see them maybe saying, you know what, let's see what would happen if we bring in a guy who is going to definitely make us better in Juuse Saros, give our goalie prospect a little bit more time and somebody to kind of learn from and see what happens then. I am interested in this. The other thing is there's a lot that Buffalo has that I think Nashville could be interested in. That's a young team with some really interesting young talent that I can see the Predators being like,
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Savoy, there's potentially your number one center right there. They already have some good centers on that roster. Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins, Casey Middlestat. That seems like a pretty good 1, 2, 3 down the road for the future. So, maybe they look at Savoy and be like, okay, we're going to use this extra guy to go out and take a big swing at a player that we need right now. And the other thing is Buffalo is, they haven't made the playoffs since 2011. Like they are desperate to win right now. And somebody like Saros, would kind of quell some of the big holes that they still have in their lineup.
Yeah.
Give fans something to kind of cheer for right now.
Yeah.
So I like Buffalo, and I think they're another team that has some options. You mentioned one, Anne, before we started the show.
I know.
do you want to just make the pitch? Just as the wild card spot. Just make your pitch.
Look, I'm thinking about this as somebody who doesn't want to break up with Juuse Saros. So I'm trying to think of what is the most palatable thing that would make this okay with me. A, nothing. B, if we're going to trade Juuse Saros, give me Connor Hellebuck.
Really?
I'm not going to stay in Winnipeg.
Over Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I do not want Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I'm sure he's lovely. I want to be clear about that. I'm sure he's lovely. But again, I feel like we got to see what we have in our own pantry before we go to the grocery store. And I don't think the Nashville Predators know what they have in their pantry yet. I think you've got to wait before you go after somebody like that. I think that's just a waste to do that. But look, if you're going to take away Juuse Saros, I would really like a goaltender back who is going to do what Juuse Saros does. Give me a guy who's going to steal some games for us. Connor Hellebuck.
Fair. I mean, when you expand like that, fair.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're saying, wow, Nick and Anne's trade proposals are stupid, well, here's your chance to do better. Tomorrow on the Locked On Predators podcast, we are going to do DIY trades. We've got a bunch so far. Send in your trade proposals, who you would trade, what you would get back, and why you think that's a perfect fit for both teams. We will grade those. You can tweet us at LO_Predators or comment on our YouTube page. We are looking forward to doing this. We tried to do this at the trade deadline, and then the Predators actually made 50 trades, so we didn't get to do it. Hopefully we will get to do it this time around. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at PenaltyBoxRadio.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. That's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.